Welcome to another Minecraft Datapack tutorial. In today's video, we are going to be looking at how to use MCBuild to code a datapack. Now, as you might know about me, I have made loads of data packs in the past, I don't know, probably like 150 or more. And I've been using MCBuild for the past probably 2,000 hours of development, and it sped up my development speed by a good amount while also making it more optimized and just an overall better process. So that we're on the same page, I'll do a brief overview of what a data pack actually is. So in a data pack, so this is More Storage version 3.1, you have a data folder, and then in here you have a different file structure with like advancements, functions, loot tables, recipes, whatever. The functions are where the majority of the data packs lie though. And in essence, you'll have a tick function. Your tick function will just contain a bunch of Minecraft commands in it. So this is an execute command that then runs a function. We have another execute command. It executes as all the players, at all the players to then run a function. And in essence, every function that you then run will just be another list of Minecraft commands. A data pack is basically just a bunch of Minecraft commands that get run in a specific order, at a specific player or entity, at a specific time, based on a set of conditions. So looking back at More Storage, what you'll see is I have a lot of functions, right? We have a load of different files, you can open them all up. And they don't really have that much code in them. Most of them are going to be like 4 or 5 commands, right? Okay, so what is MCBuild then? Well, this is their website. It is mcbuild.dev. I'll put a link to that on screen right now, as well as in the video's description, so you can go to this webpage. But MCBuild describes itself as a familiar Minecraft language with some additional stuff thrown in, and then not needing to jump between files, which I was just mentioning. My storage pack has, I think I'd looked it up, it was 230 different files. That's a lot of files to jump between when you're trying to code something. Well, MCB allows you to have just a couple files. Okay, so I'm going to jump into a quick installation process for getting MCBuild and then a quick setup for it. And then we can look at what a .mc file is. That's what MCB uses to actually do all of your coding. And then finally, we'll make our first data pack and then look at a couple extra features of MCBuild. So if we go to view the docs here, there is actually a video tutorial by Ancient King. I would suggest watching that if you're having trouble setting it up. I'm not going to go into as much detail as he did. Basically, we need to install node.json. That is this file right here. You can go to their website. It should be really simple to set up. Once you have node.json installed, you'll want to open up a command prompt. You can do this by searching CMD in your search bar down here, and that should open up a command prompt. Once you do that, simply type the npm space i -g mc-build, hit enter, and this should install MCBuild for you. All right, so once you have MCB actually installed, we'll want to download the template MCB data pack that I'll put into the video's description. That basically has everything you need in it. Alternatively, you can generate this yourself, but I would suggest just downloading the one from the actual video's description. It should be a little bit easier. So that's this file right here, and we are going to need to actually set this up for it to work properly. So the main thing that you'll notice, there are 3 different things here that normally are not in a data pack. We have an SRC, or source folder. We have a .mc project folder. This has just 2 files in it. I think these are some sort of config. And then we have a config file that is also probably config. In the SRC folder, we'll see there's template.mc, and then there's a macros folder. We'll look at macros later, but for now, focus on template.mc. Basically, what we need to do, now that we have MCB installed, we want to open another command prompt, like so. And you are going to want to copy this path, and on your command prompt, type cd space paste. What this does is we are telling our command prompt that we want to be in the directory of this folder here, right? So we're taking the file path from here and we're saying, okay, I want to do whatever we can do from this directory. So then if we type MCB, hit enter, this will load up MCB. And essentially this command prompt here, you'll want to leave it open, and it's going to be watching any edits to this .mc file that we have in here. Looking inside our template.mc file, you'll see we have different functions here, and then there's weird parentheses. Minecraft doesn't normally use parentheses like this, so this is something that MCB uses instead. Basically, what this is saying here is that we have our function load, and anything we want to put in here will, when we save, be put into our Datapack. So what you can see is if we actually load up our data, we go to template, which is the name of the .mc function, right? So this ends up determining what the folder's name is going to be. We can go to our load function, and you'll see it says say hi, right? So this was auto-generated. If we add another thing like say subscribe, hit save, this will update. And now it also says subscribe. And this is a load function, so every time you /reload, it's going to say these two things. Now, the tick is pretty similar. Anything inside of the tick function will be ticked, like you would expect. So if we go back and we load up tick, you'll see this shows up here. But again, whatever we add here will show up over here. So that is fairly useful, but where it gets really useful is when we want to generate more functions. So normally if I wanted to, make a new function, like function subscribe, right? I'd have to go over to here. I'd probably want to copy one of these. I'd paste it, I'd rename it, subscribe, whatever, right? And then I'd get it to work. I'd have to load it up, look at everything separately, kind of a pain. Well, if you were paying attention, I just wrote function subscribe, hit save. There it is, right there. There's the file, and it doesn't have anything in it yet, but cool. I can add stuff to it right now, and now there's stuff in there. So in essence, I can use this one single folder or this one single .mc file to write my entire data pack. And all of the functions can just be made as I'm going. Okay, well that's cool and all, but I mean, that's not that useful, is it? And this was an exact question that I asked myself probably 10 hours into using this tool. And then I learned about probably the most useful feature in MCBUILD. Those are blocks. Blocks can basically be used to create a function on the fly without really needing to put any thought into it. This can be useful in pretty much any situation. Let's say we have a scoreboard, right? So we could add a scoreboard of a timer. It'll be a dummy objective. Now we have a timer, right? And maybe we want to do something for players every so often. Cool. So we set up a scoreboard where every player in the world, right, because this is getting executed as all players, they have a timer that is increasing for them. But now this is just counting up forever. So we want to do something when maybe our timer is above 20. So if we have a timer above 20, we would normally probably run a function here. We like function timer reset, right? So it would be template timer reset, then we'd have to make timer reset. It's kind of a pain, have to jump around my code a little bit. And if I'm doing this not in MCBUILD, it is a massive pain, because in order to actually reset this timer, I probably need to do that. Alternatively, I might have multiple lines, and one of them is going to reset my timer, probably the last one, right? Scoreboard, player, reset, timer, right? And then the other ones could maybe, say hi, explode, right? Particles, whatever you're trying to do, that's what would happen, right? And we can see this would work. Okay, and just to drive home this just a little bit more, okay, cool, we repeated this. Now we have 5 different commands that get run when your timer is at 20. And we can reset this every second, basically, right? So we get a bit of an explosion, essentially, and my chat is getting spammed. Well, that's cool and all, but it's very unoptimal. Basically, every time we want to do this, we'll have to do this check to actually run the command. So it would be better to use a function in this situation. but because I'm lazy, I'm not using a function, right? Turns out I can be lazy and be optimal. And that's because MCB has something called blocks. So if you type block and then you add brackets like this, anything inside of the brackets will turn into a generated function. So I could grab all of this mess, put it all in here, get rid of the check for the timer, hit save, and you'll see when we reload, this should be doing the exact same thing still. And we can check the code for what exactly is happening here, right? So we have now a generated folder here. Inside this generated folder, we have the block folder because we just made a block, right? And now we have a file name of 0. Just going to name these 0 through infinity. And so as you can see, that is literally just this, right? Line 19 through 22, it put in there for me. The useful part, of course, being that, okay, cool. I mean, I didn't have to actually type out a function, type out the function name. I just did block, added brackets. Now I'm done. This is more optimal and it really speeds up your development time. Okay, and just to drive home the point, you'll notice if we look at the players folder, this is exactly what it's running, right? Pack name, generated folder, block 0. Now, a cool thing about these blocks is that they actually don't have to be a generated name. You can actually name them whatever you want. So if your first line is name test, right? We can hit save to that, and now you'll notice that the generated folder disappeared, and now we have test instead. And it's the same thing, we just got a function name instead of a generated one. I generally don't end up naming most of my functions, but the nice part about doing this is if we wanted to use this later, we could run function, and we know it's going to be template test, right? So now we should see, yeah, it's going to happen every game tick. Sorry if that's really loud. I will turn down my sounds. Right, this is happening every game tick now because it's not inside of the timer. But we generated the function and now we can call it because we have a name for it. Technically, you could still call a generated function. I don't suggest doing that because their name could change on you literally whenever if you added a block. Right, if we added a block right here, this would then be block 0 and that would be block 1 and it would break whatever. So name it if you're going to call it. Okay, so those tools are pretty useful, but there's some other stuff thrown in here that is really powerful as well. The main one that I've found use for is loops, and this is sort of the syntax for it. So you have loop in all caps, then you have the parentheses, and then you have a number. And this is a variable for whatever you want it to be, and then we have an I. And basically what a loop does is it will generate code for you. In this case, this is saying particle flame at the location, and then I want it to be equal to I. If we actually look at the generated function here, what you'll notice is we get 10 commands generated, and they'll have between 0 and 10, or I guess 0 and 9, right? So reloading a Minecraft, you'll see we just get like a pillar of fire, right? And that was generated from the single line of code here. The cool thing about this is it starts at 0 and then it will count up until it reaches I, right? So we could set this to 1,000, hit save. Cool, now I have 1,000 commands in this generated function, right? I could set this to 50, right? That's more reasonable. Well, cool. That's great and all. Let's set this to 100, hit save. Now I have a giant pillar of fire, right? But they're kind of spaced apart. So maybe I want to do, instead of equaling I, we could do equals I divided by 10. And now we should get a line, right? Because, cool, okay, so we get 0 divided by 10 equals 0. Then we get 1 divided by 10, 0.1, 2 divided by 10, 0.2, so on and so forth. And it's just going to keep, now we have decimal places, right? That's the cool thing about this. We can do math on it. So maybe for 10, we want to do I plus 2. And so now, we're going to, instead of starting at 0, we're going to start at 2. Pretty much whatever you're wanting to generate here, you can get to generate, assuming you do the proper math on it. And that's why this is so powerful. So anyway, loops basically just let you make really grindy code a little bit less grindy, because sometimes there's really no good way to code something other than to just make a giant list of things. And so, I don't know, instead of writing a list of 50 different numbers, cool, write a quick loop, have it generate for you, and it's going to be a lot cleaner in your code. And you might be thinking, well, that's cool and all, admin, but you don't actually reasonably use that. Like, using your brain to code, like, where would you really do that? I do use it. See this here? This is my WASD increasing speed data pack. And you'll notice I have a loop with 1,000 things in it. And so I just take I value here, and then I have I divided by 1,000 here. And we can look at the code that got generated for this. It is the player speed function here. And what you'll see is we'll have speed variable when I equals 0. We get increased speed of 0, but then when it equals 1, we get a speed increase of 0.001. And I do that 1,000 times. If I would have written this by hand, it would have been a pain. It wouldn't have been impossible, right? I probably would have just made like an Excel spreadsheet to generate all the numbers for me, but still, like, that would have taken time. It would have been annoying. I can just write literally what? It was 3 lines, technically just 2, right? And I'm done. Okay, so loops are cool. What else is cool? Well, macros are really cool. If we go back into our SRC folder, into the macros folder, you'll see that I included example.mcm. This is a .mc macro. And it has a format like this. So we have the macros name here. This is what we will call in our code. And then I like to put a block inside of it. You don't have to put this block inside of it. In fact, let me show you what it's like without it. But here we have say and then $0 over and over again. This is going to be the example that I use for this tutorial, but there are way more complex things you can do. At the very top of our .mc file, we want to import and then find the folder that we put example.mcm in. Of course, rename this to whatever your macro is going to be named. This needs to be the file name, and then I would suggest putting the macro name as the same thing. Inside of our data pack, what we can do is we can actually just run this macro by basically making your own custom command. So we want to run example, and then example wants, this is called an argument. So this is argument 0. It wants us to basically give it an argument. In this case, I'm going to have it say hi. So example hi. When we save this, you'll notice say turns into a bunch of hi, right? And it's the same amount as we have here. 6, there's also 6 here. So if we change this, it changes over here. And we can have multiple of this. And cool, it just generated all of that code for us. So instead of having, 12 commands, we have our 2 commands. Of course, where this gets really strong, really powerful, is like, they don't have to be the same command. They could be whatever you want. And better yet, we can have multiple arguments. So we could have argument 1, we could have argument 2, we could have argument 3. And now, if we, hello, hi, we could say, how are you? Because we can have multiple characters if we put them in the square brackets, and then subscribe, whatever. We save that, and we just generated a bunch of different code, all from one line of code. I've used this in the past for all sorts of stuff, like my custom crafters. Every recipe that's generated there is like 20-some commands. Well, I just have one single one that I have to write to generate a new recipe. My machines data pack made massive use of this. As you can see here, I have a lot of different macros. This is a super long data pack, right? It's over 2,000 lines. And so for some of these, like damage tool, we can find that in our code here. You'll see this is just being run 4 different times. But I believe this is like 1,000 lines of code right here. If we actually open up damage tool, you'll see, okay, so for used pick, I go to damage tool, and then all of this code runs. So this one doesn't actually have any arguments. Essentially, it just runs a lot of this code, 22 lines of code, when this is true. Similarly, we have check slot, except this one actually does have some arguments. It has 2 of them. So something's probably happening here. So we can check what that is. And opening it up in MCB, we'll see it looks like it's looking for some tools. We have first argument here. This is checking different slots by the look of it. And then second argument here is looking for a different tool type. So yeah, for slot 1, I think every single one of these, all of these, this is all going to be, this would always be like equal to 1 in this situation, right? And then on this line, this is going to be a hoe in this one, but like a shovel here, an axe here, so on and so forth, right? So essentially, I wrote one single macro, and it let, instead of this being like hundreds upon hundreds of lines of code, it's still a lot. I mean, it's still like 40, but cool. I mean, it's less. Now, I'm not exactly a master at using macros yet. You can actually do a lot of code in JavaScript using macros, but I don't really know how to use JavaScript, so most of my code is still more Minecrafty-like. But I'll probably be doing another tutorial at some point on how to use macros, just to give you a better rundown of what exactly you can and can't do with them. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It hopefully cleared up questions that you would have in my future tutorials on what MCB even is, how to use it, how to install it. Overall, a good look at how to use the tool. That's what I was going for. So if you have any more questions or comments, concerns, whatever, feel free to leave them in the comments. But of course, you can also join my Discord and ask for help there. I won't necessarily be able to help you with different Datapack problems, but I can always potentially lend a hand. And there's other people in the community that very much so would love to help you out. But that's all I have for today's tutorial, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on it. Hit that subscribe button, because I'm going to be doing lots more tutorials like this in the future. You guys really seem to like them, and Minecraft community doesn't have much for quality tutorials, so I figured I'll just make tutorials, and sure, they won't be quality, but I mean, there'll be more tutorials. Haha. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the very next video.